Hello everyone, welcome back to Sydney and Starlet, and if you're new here,
welcome.
Enjoy the
Yes.
videos. So today, me and Sydney are going to be reading Disney's Dumbo Storybook. So let's begin. This was actually another requested book. We get lots of Dumbo requests. Dumbo is a great story. Early one morning, while most people were still fast asleep, a flock of the storks appeared in the sky. They had been flying all night and were very happy to catch a glimpse of a large tent surrounded by a group of smaller tents and trailers. "They're below! It's the circus!" shouted one of the storks as he reached his bundle. Soon all the other storks let go of their parcels, and the sky was filled with parachutes carrying blue and pink bundles. A gentle breeze delivered the drifting arrivals right to the tents. Oh goodness, I just sneezed. Mrs. Giraffe, the tallest, was the first to spot the bundles. "Wake up, everyone! The storks have come!" she called. "Our little ones are here!" Baby giraffes, tigers, lions, bears, and kangaroos floated down to their waiting mothers. The animals ran this way and that to catch their young. The baby tiger landed gently next to his mother, and the baby giraffe reached out her long neck to lick her mother on the way down. Mrs. Jumbo, the elephant, watched as each baby arrived. Even after the sky was empty, she continued to look up. "Oh dear," she sighed. "I was certain they would be a bundle for me. Now I'll have to wait until next year." She began to cry. By mid-morning, the circus tents were folded and the animals loaded onto the train. The circus was moving to another town. Casey Jr. was a brave little engine, and he sang, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can," as he climbed the hills pulling his heavy load. "Whoop whoop," he whistled as he chugged slowly uphill. And when he reached the top and began racing down, he sang faster. "I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could." He tooted his whistle with joy. As the train sped along the tracks, a small shape moved along the tops of the cars. It was a stork, carrying a large bundle and shouting, "Mrs. Jumbo! Special delivery for Mrs. Jumbo!" Hearing the stork's shouts, two elephants stuck their trunks through an opening and waved. "Over here!" they signaled. The stork lowered his heavy bundle into the wagon. "Better late than never," he said, tipping his cap. "You'd better check to make sure he's yours," he said, as Mrs. Jumbo untied the parcel. "He looks perfect," exclaimed Mrs. Jumbo, staring proudly at her new baby. His duty done, the stork bowed to Mrs. Jumbo and was on his way. The other elephants crowded around the new arrival. "Isn't he just adorable?" one of them cooed. "Looks just like his mother," said another, and the other elephants nodded their heads in agreement. Then, letting out a big sneeze, the little elephant shook his head, exposing two enormous floppy ears. "Hey, I just recently sneezed in the beginning of the video." "Take a look at those ears," said one of the elephants, stretching one of his ears with her trunk. The elephants laughed. "I never saw anything so dumb looking in all my life. We'll have to call him Dumbo," said the biggest elephant. Mrs. Jumbo picked up her baby and stormed off to a corner so they could be alone. "Don't pay any attention to them," she said softly. "I think you are the most handsome elephant in the world. They're just jealous." And she cuddled him and gently stroked him with her trunk. Late that night, the train finally reached the town where the circus was to perform. The animals were unloaded, and the tents were pitched. The next morning, a parade was held to announce the circus's arrival. Proud camels led the way, followed by the ringmaster, who shouted to the crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, come to the big top tonight. We'll make you laugh. We'll make you cry. We'll thrill you with wonderful acts you've never seen before. All this and more at the circus." Behind the ringmaster, the hippo yawned as he pulled the 33-ton pipe organ along. An endless stream of animals passed through the town. Kangaroos carried their babies in their pouches and hopped along beside the bears, while lions roared from their cages, frightening the crowd. Bringing up the rear were the elephants, and the last of all was little Dumbo. Clutching his mother's tail, Dumbo looked around in wonder. This was his first parade, and it was all very exciting. He dreamed of the day when he would be at the head of the procession. Lost in his daydreams, Dumbo didn't look where he was going. He stepped on one of his enormous ears and tumbled headfirst into a mud puddle. Seeing the little elephant trip made the crowd laugh. "Look at those ears!" a boy shouted. "They make the biggest slingshot in the world!" He reached over and pulled at one of Dumbo's ears. It snapped back and knocked the little elephant over again. The crowd laughed and jeered even more. Dumbo was filled with shame. Tears fell from his eyes as he tried to wrap himself up in his huge ears. The boy reached out and pulled one of his ears again. This time, Dumbo cried out in pain. Hearing her baby cry, Mrs. Jumbo rushed to his aid, trumpeting in anger. She grabbed the boy with her trunk and lifted him up in the air. The boy was frightened and began to yell, "Help! Help!" he shouted. "You're hurting me!" Which of course was not true. Mrs. Jumbo only wanted to teach him a lesson. So she placed him gently back on the ground. But the crowd had become hysterical. Thinking that Mrs. Jumbo was wild, they called for help. "That elephant is crazy! Do something! She's dangerous!" shouted the bystanders. The trainers came running with ropes which they threw around Mrs. Jumbo's neck. Mrs. Jumbo reared up on her hind legs and shrieked in protest, but it was too late. The ropes tightened around her, and she was led away. "Lock her up!" shouted the ringmaster. Poor little Dumbo watched as his mother was led away. Now he was all alone. He went to the other elephants, hoping to find out where his mother was. But when the elephants saw Dumbo coming, they turned their backs on him. "What a disgrace! All that fuss for a floppy-eared little runt," said one of the elephants. "Nothing would have happened if it weren't for that Dumbo. It's all his fault," replied another. Poor Dumbo sat down and began to cry. As he sobbed quietly in the corner, he felt something tickle his trunk. It was a little mouse. "Don't be sad, Dumbo. I'm your friend," whispered the mouse. "I heard what they said about you, and I'm going to teach those gossiping pachyderms a lesson." The little mouse crept up behind the elephant and, placing his hands on his hips, let out a piercing squeak. The startled elephants stampeded out of the tents without a backward glance. "If there's one thing that scares an elephant, it's a mouse," chuckled Dumbo's new friend. Dumbo looked at the little mouse with admiration. The mouse bowed. "Timothy's the name," he said. "I may be small, but don't let my size fool you.
I get around, and no one notices me. I know everything that goes on in this circus. I know that your mother's been locked away, and I also know that you're ashamed of your ears. Well, I think they're great. Those ears are going to make you famous one of these days. Stick with me, kid. I've got big plans for you. That night, as the ringmaster lay fast asleep, Timothy crept up beside his pillow and whispered into the sleeping man's ear, "Tomorrow, for the grand finale, use the elephants. Think big, and big means Dumbo." The mouse repeated the message several times in the sleeping ringmaster's ear. The next morning, the ringmaster awoke with a smile on his face. "I've got a wonderful idea for the new grand finale," he said. "I'll use the elephants and that little Dumbo too. And to think that I thought of it all by myself." With that, he rushed off to prepare the new act. That night, standing under the spotlight, surrounded by elephants balancing on their hind legs, the ringmaster announced the grand finale. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will now present for your entertainment the most stupendous, magnificent, super colossal spectacle ever witnessed," shouted the ringmaster. As the audience held its breath, an elephant climbed onto a large ball. The crowd watched as elephant after elephant climbed on top of each other. "Ouch! Get your foot out of my eye!" grumbled the elephant on the bottom. "Gaining a little weight, aren't you?" mumbled another elephant, sagging under the weight of her friend. "And now for the grand finale," shouted the ringmaster. "Little Dumbo will leap from a springboard onto the top of this pyramid of pachyderms." The bright spotlight shone down on Dumbo, who was frozen with stage fright. Timothy the mouse had tied the little elephant's ears out of the way. He gave Dumbo a nudge and whispered, "Go ahead, kid. Show them what you're made of." Dumbo gathered his courage and began to run into the big ring toward the springboard. As he ran, his ears came untied and flopped down. The audience gasped as Dumbo tripped and went flying head over heels, bumping right into the ball on which the elephants were balanced. For a split second, all was silent. Then a faint creaking was heard as the elephants began to sway back and forth. The people in the audience ran for their lives as the huge pyramid of elephants began to collapse. One of the falling elephants landed on the trapeze, and another clung to her tail. Back and forth they went. "I can't hold on much longer," shouted the elephant who was holding on by her trunk. The ringmaster stood by helplessly. Finally, the elephant on the trapeze fell, taking her friend with her. As if blown by a strong wind, the circus tent began to billow. Then it collapsed. Fortunately, except for a few bumps and bruises, no one had been badly hurt. Dumbo, however, was in serious trouble. "A star, huh?" snorted the ringmaster. "You're nothing but a bungling clown. So that's exactly what you can be." Dumbo's face was painted, and he was forced to stand in the ring, waving a little flag. Night after night, Dumbo played the fool as clowns threw cream pies in his face, and the audiences laughed and jeered. One day, the clowns came up with a new act for Dumbo. They built a large house and made it believe it was on fire. At the very top was Dumbo, wearing a baby bonnet. Dressed as firemen, the clowns ran around frantically, waving fire hoses and squirting everything. One clown held up a tiny ladder. "Do you think this is long enough?" he asked, as the audience roared with laughter. "The ladder is much too short," shouted one of the clowns. "The baby will have to jump." "Jump, baby! We'll catch you!" yelled the firemen, who were holding a safety net. Dumbo looked down, shaking with fright. It was a long way down, and the net didn't look very strong. The fumes from the make-believe fire hurt his eyes. The audience began to chant, "Jump! Jump!" Dumbo closed his eyes and leaped. His ears flapped out behind him. Dumbo thought the net would break his fall, but his ordeal wasn't over. The net tore under his weight, and Dumbo fell into a tub of water, making a big splash. The audience roared with laughter at the sight of the big wet baby. Soon the laughter turned into applause, but the clowns were the ones who took the bows. Ashamed and still shaking, Dumbo walked sadly out of the circus tent. He had never felt so miserable in his life. Timothy found Dumbo shivering in a corner. "What you need is a good bath, and you'll feel better in no time," said Timothy, taking up a sponge and scrubbing off the makeup. "Cheer up, Dumbo. I've got some good news for you. I found out where they're keeping your mother. Tonight at midnight, I'll take you to her." Dumbo could hardly wait. He missed his mother very much. That night, Mrs. Dumbo heard a noise outside her prison car. She turned and saw a little trunk sticking through the bars. "Dumbo? Is that you?" she whispered, moving slowly toward the window. Her legs were chained to huge iron balls. "Wait, I'm coming," she said, as she strained at her chains to reach the window. Mrs. Dumbo slid her trunk between the bars and touched Dumbo. Her eyes filled with tears. "You've grown since I saw you last," she said, cradling Dumbo in her trunk. "And you smell so nice and sweet. Thank goodness someone is looking after you." Rocking Dumbo gently, she began to sing a lullaby. After some time, Timothy appeared and whispered to Dumbo that it was time to go. Dumbo and his mother sadly waved goodbye. As they neared the circus tents, Dumbo and Timothy heard the shrieks of laughter and the popping of corks. The noise was coming from the clowns' tent. "Did you catch the look on that little elephant's face when he fell into the water?" asked one of the clowns, collapsing in a fit of giggles. "Tomorrow we'll make the house taller. Then he'll make an even bigger splash," said the second clown. "Better be careful," another clown warned. "We don't want to hurt the little guy." "Ah, you can't hurt an elephant," the second clown scoffed. "They're made of rubber." All the clowns laughed. Dumbo had overheard the clowns' unkind remark. It made him feel embarrassed. "Don't worry, kid," Timothy blustered. "You and I will have the last laugh. The whole circus will be proud of you one day. You'll make those clowns sorry they ever made fun of you. Now come on," he continued, leading Dumbo away to their sleeping quarters. "Let's get some rest." Soon they both snuggled down to sleep. "Sweet dreams," Timothy whispered. But Dumbo's dreams that night weren't exactly sweet. Strange shapes floated in and out of his dreams. Pink and purple elephants danced and did tricks. The little elephant also dreamed he was flying. Up and down he swooped as he slept, free of all his cares. What a wonderful sensation it was to be up in the treetops. Why, he even dreamed he could hear birds. Timothy snuggled down more securely in the curve of Dumbo's trunk. The little elephant's eyes moved behind his closed lids as he listened to the birds in his dream. "But would you look at this?" said a rough voice. It sounded like a crow. "What I want to know," said another voice, "is how an elephant got up in this tree." "How do you think?" said yet another voice. "He flew." "Flew?" laughed the first crow. "Elephants can't fly." Dumbo smiled in his sleep. Of course elephants couldn't fly. He should know. He was an elephant. But suddenly, Dumbo began to wonder whether he was really dreaming. His eyes flew open. The birds in his dream were crows, and they were real. He was in a tree. Not only was he in a tree, he was falling out of a tree. Dumbo grabbed for the tree limb with his trunk, but he couldn't hold on. Down he fell, landing in a pond with an enormous splash. This was too much for the crows. They almost fell out of the tree too. They were laughing so hard. Poor Dumbo. It was the same old story. People were laughing at him. "Don't pay any attention to those old crows, Dumbo," Timothy advised. "But I still wondered how we got up in that tree. Elephants can't climb, can they?" Dumbo shook his head. "And they don't jump, do they?" Dumbo shook his head again. "Hey, son," called one of the crows. "Maybe he flew up." "Oh, right," said Timothy, throwing his hands up in the air. "Sure, maybe he flew up." Then he looked at Dumbo and at his huge ears. How else could he have done it? Timothy took Dumbo's ear in one hand. "Your ears, Dumbo!" he cried. "Just look at him! They're perfect wings!" Dumbo shook his head empathetically. Timothy tried to persuade him. "Just think," he told Dumbo. "Dumbo, the world's only flying elephant." The crow snickered. "Go ahead, laugh," Timothy told them. "Kick him when he's down." He started to lead Dumbo away. The crows felt terrible. "Don't go," said one. He called for a huddle. When they were finished, he handed Dumbo a shiny black feather. "This is a magic feather," he told Dumbo. "Just hold on to it and you'll soar like an eagle." So, with Timothy urging him to go ahead and try, and the crows pushing him from behind, Dumbo had no choice but to take off. Dumbo closed his eyes and began to flap his ears with all his might. And instead of falling through the air, he began to float. Timothy gave a shout of delight. "I knew you could do it! Look, we're flying!" Dumbo opened one eye and then the other. Timothy was right. He wasn't falling. He was gliding like a bird. Dumbo was overjoyed. This was exactly like his dream. He spread his ears out like wings and turned his body to go right or left, up or down. Before long, he was diving and swooping over houses and trees. Flying was wonderful. Timothy began chattering away. "Just wait until the others see you. Oh, Dumbo, I knew you'd be famous someday. But we mustn't let the others know just yet. Wait until tonight. Then we'll surprise them." During the circus performance, later that day, Dumbo got ready to perform the jumping baby act with Timothy perched in his hat. The clowns had made the burning house even taller. They were looking forward to the enormous splash that Dumbo would make when he fell into the tub. "Go on, jump!" they yelled. This time, Dumbo was not afraid. He was holding the magic feather in his trunk. Dumbo jumped into the air, but in his excitement, he dropped the feather. Frozen with fear, he began to fall. But Timothy shouted, "The magic feather isn't magic! You don't need it to fly, Dumbo. You can fly all by yourself!" With that, Dumbo spread his ears. As he came within a few feet of the safety net, he changed direction. Instead of plunging into the water, he soared up toward the top of the tent. The audience was silent. They watched in wonder as Dumbo soared overhead, around and around the big top. "Whee! We did it!" cried Timothy, looking down from his place in Dumbo's hat. The audience began to applaud. Then they started to cheer. No one had ever seen anything like it before. "Let's show him a power dive," shouted Timothy. Dumbo decided to have some fun. He zoomed over the heads of the crowds, then over the ringmaster's head. The audience roared with laughter. But this time they were laughing at the clowns, and not at Dumbo. The terrified ringmaster jumped headfirst into the tub of water meant for Dumbo. Thunderous applause rang in Dumbo's ears. The audience loved him. He was a star. Dumbo became an overnight sensation. Every newspaper in the land carried his picture on the front page. The Sun showed him power diving in the circus. The news showed him flying over the countryside in an aviator's cap, setting a new altitude record. Everyone knew about Dumbo, the flying elephant. Dumbo drew record crowds in every town and village the circus passed through. The ringmaster was so happy with his new star that he ordered Dumbo's mother to be released. Every morning, high above the circus tents, a small figure could be seen soaring across the sky. It was Dumbo, practicing his act. With Timothy in his cap, he performed nose dives, spirals, loop-de-loops, spins, rolls, and landings, while his mother watched proudly from the ground. I'm sneezing again. I sneezed at the beginning of the video, and now I'm sneezing towards the end. Below, the other elephants looked on with pride. They had changed their minds about the little runt. "He's going to go far, that Dumbo," said one. "I always said he was special," said another. "No, I was the first to say so," argued a third. "Whoop whoop, chugga 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 chugga," tooted Casey Jr. as he raced down the track. He was proud of his famous passenger, Dumbo, the flying elephant. The end. So that is it for today, everyone. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and we will see you all in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Pick out your favorite page and your favorite character. That's a lovely page. Who's your favorite character?
Dumbo.
Dumbo? Dumbo's a great choice. Bye-bye.
Dumbo.
Dumbo is my favorite too.